Alright, so, hello everyone, a little update. Unfortunately, so the tracking website that I have on my phone has, unfortunately been showing that, so Enkidu is still stuck in customs, and he's been stuck in customs for about, like, maybe 3 days or so since the 22nd, I believe, or since the 19th, I don't know, it updated twice, and that was a little weird. And yeah, so, and it's the 24th right now, I believe, 25th. So yeah, unfortunately, he's going to, the cosplay project, making his clothes, going to be on hold as of right now. So yeah, just that's where we're at, and yeah, so rest in peace. But instead of that, I'm going to, as I'm moving stuff away from here right now, I'm going to actually, so I can't talk. So instead of doing that, I have devised a backup plan instead of Enkidu's clothes, which I am moving stuff from here now to.
Well, that went all according to plan, huh? Good evening, everyone. I'm back, and what an eventful two months it's been. Well, to keep it brief, there's two, well, maybe three main reasons things didn't exactly go as planned. Number one, my day one cosplay buddy, the doll this 3-video Anime Expo trilogy revolved around, has been stuck in customs since May 22nd, and they're not even at the face-up artist yet. But that's a story for when he finally arrives, cause this video isn't about that. But since he wasn't going to arrive on time, I had to replan which cosplays to do and which dolls I would bring to Anime Expo. Number 2, Rua, my mini Dollfie dream, caught the pink disease. Pause to read what that is. I'm pretty sure my previously infected garage Barbies gave it to her, but the full explanation is also for another video I've planned. Rest assured though, Rua is a-okay right now. Just, it was a lot of work trying to make sure it wouldn't spread to my other big vinyls. But yeah. Number 3, I procrastinated, which will be a common theme throughout this cosplay journey, as you will see. But anyways, back on topic. As mentioned before, because my new doll wouldn't return from the face-up artist on time, I had to rework which cosplays I was gonna do. I think it also had a lot to do with skill too, because before this point, I hadn't really sewn anything too complicated. Like, the only thing really crazy, in beginner terms, was making a pair of shorts modified from the official Smart Doll Girl pants pattern. They weren't even supposed to be wearable, I was just kind of messing around with my sewing machine. And this was in February of 2022, more than a full year prior. So I honestly was going into this as a beginner. And it shows, cause I have no idea what I'm doing. Also, I have no idea why I'm beating around the bush like, ooh, secret doll, ooh, who is it? It's Enkidu. I have an Enkidu custom on the way. Back in April when I was still in Osaka, I had the opportunity to do Dream Choice, and that's where I got them from. So the original plan was, day 1, I would bring Enkidu wearing his Conversations of the Hot Sands outfit, while I would be in his default bedsheet ass looking clothes. Then on day 2, one of my Smart Dog girls would be cosplaying as Carlita from Pokemon the movie Black and White Victini and Zekrom. Well, I would be cosplaying as her brother, Damon, the love of my life. However, once it became apparent Enkidu would not be present with us this Anime Expo, my plan shifted to, okay, I still want to be Enkidu, so instead, I'll have one of my dolls cosplay as Ishtar. Day 2 remained unchanged, but cause of a skill issue, I wouldn't be able to make a competent enough Ishtar cosplay. So the final plan was day 1, Enkidu, and since I didn't have enough time to make a doll cosplay, I just go by myself. Rest in peace. Day 2 was still pretty much the same. One of my smart dolls would be Carlita, and I, Damon. But as usual, even final plans didn't go the way I want him to. The cosplay that left me awake at night, tossing and turning. See, when I mentioned I'm very much a beginner, sewer, seamstress, tailor, guy who sews. I mean, even sewing a straight line gave me trouble. So when it became apparent I wasn't competent enough to sew 2 pieces of fabric together, let alone a pair of pants, I decided to buy a pre-made Enkidu cosplay instead. Cost also played a big factor in this decision, as I don't have a job yet, so there's no constant source of income for me to spend on fabric, paint, etc. At first I thought I'd found a way around this by using an old white bedsheet or something, but unfortunately we didn't have anything of the sort. So pre-made cosplay it was. However, for some reason Enkidu isn't a very common character to cosplay. I even found a Sajuri cosplay, and she's like the most minor of minor fate characters. I eventually did find some, but they were being sold through Binaire, which seems to be a proxy site that sells cosplays from Taobao. However, many reviews of their service did not seem favorable, and I couldn't really afford to shell out $50 on shipping alone, which I ended up doing for the wig, but, well, we'll get there when we get there. I was also afraid that the cosplay wouldn't arrive in time, so in the end, I opted for a kind of closet cosplay summer Enkidu. This consisted of a white shirt I had, khaki pants, these honestly ugly-ass dad sandals, the wig, a pendant necklace I would make, and a flower, which I would also make myself. I bought her from Doki Doki Cosplay, and this, in fact, isn't even an Enkidu wig. Since none of the major mainstream cosplay companies carried a wig specifically made for Enkidu, I had the genius idea of, like, hey, who's another green-haired whore that's wholly more popular and a girl? Yep, it's C2 Code Geass. It wasn't too expensive, coming around about $9, but as mentioned before, I did pay around $50 for faster shipping. And it did! The wig arrived really fast. I ordered it on the 5th of June, it shipped on the 7th, and it arrived on the 12th. Here she is! I was a bit worried about the length, but I greatly underestimated how short I am. I didn't take it out of the net so it wouldn't get tangled, but from what I could tell, the fibers felt pretty soft. Listen, even if I haven't worn a human-sized wig, I'm basically an expert because of my Dollfies and Smart Dolls. They also included a wig cap as well. I tried it on after I finished recording and, well, yeah, I think I'm just bad at putting on wigs regardless. Maybe my head's too big, I don't know. Enkidu's primary outfit doesn't really have any standout features except this long necklace thingy. I plan to add this element by shortening it with just the spearhead pendant thingy for a more casual look. I first started out by shaping some Sculpey air dry clay into a spear shape. Keep in mind, I'm not very proficient with using clay either, so it's going to turn out a bit on the unique side. And here she is, all dried, kind of. The circle part at the top I added off camera, which was still a bit pliable at this point. I was afraid it turned out looking like a certain type of a fun time toy, but after testimony from 2 people, they both said it did indeed look like a spearhead. This piece was partially inspired by this summer craft essence where Kidu is using a flower hair tie to do their hair. Also because I've made one like this before. It was for a New Year's shamisen performance, and on that day I think I got Arjuna Alter and FGO as well. No, I did not pay for him. Happy New Year's! Anyways, that's besides the point. I figured I wouldn't have any more use for that clip, so I threw it away. Here I'm drawing out a petal and stamen shape on paper. While the hair tie Enkidu uses in the craft essence seems to be based on a white plumeria, I'm making this flower based on one of their Valentine's craft essence. If you're familiar with the original myth, I'm pretty sure that flower is based on the one Gilgamesh seeks out to gain immortality. I'm then going to use this very fluffy air dry compound to make the petals. And I seem to have forgotten that paper is not the best material to use as a pattern. Instead, use any sort of clear see-through plastic. From what I remember, When I made my first flower, I used the cover from some sort of plastic package. This time I'm using some random plastic bag I found. Also, if you're going to use a pen, make sure it sticks to the plastic, as some did transfer onto the clay for me. Alright, let's actually get into making this thing. First, you're going to want to shape a piece of clay into a circular base that's not too thick but not too thin. This is what's going to hold all the petals in one place. Gauging how much clay to use for the petals is a bit tricky, as you want to spread it out to be thin enough, but not that thin, so it won't peel off the plastic without leaving a hole. If you feel an area is too thin, spread a bit more clay over it. Personally, I still leave my petals a bit bumpy as it looks and feels a bit more realistic, but if it seems too crazy, then you can always use a tiny bit of water to smooth it out. Since this clay was very dry, I used more than usual to mold it into the shape I wanted. I did this 5 more times to get all the petals I needed. Can you tell the ones I made later on look way better? Next are the stamens. After much trial and error, because I forgot how I made them last time, I found the best way to get that desired anther and filament shape is to roll them into little snakes, making sure the top is rounded out and a bit more thick. I probably would have made the top more detailed, but I was running short on time, so basic elongated ovals it was. As you can see, I ended up using the guide more for measurement than shape. Unfortunately, this is the last you'll see of both the pendant and the hair clip, cause I lost the spearhead while standing in line at AX and left the flower at home. Maybe one day I'll give a more in-depth tutorial on how to make the flower clip. If you want to see that, leave a comment. It was finally the night before AX, and the last thing I had to prepare for this cosplay was my Enkidu Ita Bag. I can't remember if I had planned to include it in my original cosplay, but whether or not I did, I'm glad I decided to anyways. Since besides the wig and the pendant, which I would lose anyways, you couldn't really tell who I was supposed to be. With the Ita Bag, however, it couldn't have been any more obvious. And, yes, I'm also including Kingu merch in here, cause even though they're spoilers, different spirits, they still share the same body. Also, there's an abundance of secondhand Kingu merch thanks to the somewhat recent FGO Babylonia anime. Oh no. Also, yes, your eyes do not deceive you, she was originally an Ita Bag dedicated to Rei Sakuma Undead Ensemble Stars. Well, she still is. This was before one of my friends picked up this lovely green Ita Bag for me. But at the time I recorded, they still had to share. This smaller black one I originally bought while I was in Japan. I ordered it from Animate's online store for about 1,980 yen. I think that's 14 USD. It's the non-character original cherry sauce Ita Bag BKG Tri-GR. I'm not exactly sure if it's still available for purchase, but if it is, I recommend getting it for something that's not too big. It also has a pocket in the back to put your phone or wallet in. Unfortunately, this bag doesn't come with an insert to put pins, so I use a piece of craft foam colored according to a certain character. I didn't have enough pins to fill in the entire space, so I'm using some keychains by attaching them with these repositionable glue dots. I wouldn't really recommend using them, as after being moved around, they're already falling out, but in a smaller bag like this, the tightly packed space keeps them from moving around too much. For some finishing touches, I attached the remaining keychains to the outside of the bag. For this smaller black pouch thing, which I also picked up at Anime, but in store this time, I put my Enkidu Nui as well as this little Sanrio Enkidu figure. And here she is. Man, I really wish I could have taken my Dollfie dream with me, but oh well, maybe next year. Yeah, so I kinda mused at the idea of making Rue the most crusty nursery rhyme closet cosplay, cause this dream choice wig I got with Enkidu somewhat looks similar to her hair, and I thought it would be, a waste if I didn't bring something to represent my own niche subculture within the subculture. I think the worst part is I'm really bad at doing any type of hairstyle, let alone my arch nemesis braids, and I know, I couldn't get them as thin as Nursery's actual hair, but I still had to try. Also, this dress Rue was wearing is literally Nursery Rhyme theme. It was perfect. But yeah, at this point, my card was running out of space, so I was unable to film me doing the other braid and completing the look. Unfortunately, this cosplay didn't end up happening, but I still wanted to mention it briefly, cause if you notice my channel description, yeah, I'm very normal about Damon, or Dread Grangil in Japanese, who is a totally popular Pokemon character and from, of course, one of the most popular nostalgic Pokemon movies. I don't want to go too into it, cause trust me, I can talk about Damon, the movie, etc. for hours on end, but I potentially have another video planned in the future where I can do all that. Be prepared. Totally self-indulgent, but I gotta spread the propaganda, or else I'm not the #1 Damon stan, of course. Anyways, for this cosplay, I originally planned to make his casual, kind of out on the town look. Also similar to the Enkidu cosplay, I was going to use pieces from my own closet, such as this red shirt and these gray pants. The necklace, headband, and vest were all going to be made from scratch, but in the end, I only partially made the necklace. I started out by needing a very dry piece of Sculpey air-dry paper clay. Then I rolled it out with a wooden straw. I gotta make do with what I have, Next, I used a cup to punch out a circle. I then tried to smooth out the edges with water, but I honestly think that made it worse. And here's the circle dried. Very uneven, you won't be seeing it again. As mentioned before, Carlita is Damon's younger sister and serves a very minor role in the film. She basically shows up, fights Ash in a tournament, Unji, legendary Pokemon, exposition dump, background character. But her design is absolutely adorable and works perfectly as a complimentary cosplay for one of my dolls. I wasn't too worried about the complexity, as Pokemon designs usually don't have a lot going on, but oh boy, was I in for a surprise. Carlita's skirt looks simple at first glance, but the more you look at it, it's hard to tell what goes where. Is there a snap, or is that a decorative stitch? Cause there's one at the back too. Wait, are these actually shorts? That seam line goes down to the bottom, but the front doesn't. Are those functioning pockets on the front, or are they just for decoration? It just kind of added up to things being simplified for animation. Also, since this is fiction, the outfit couldn't be replicated 100% accurately in real life. The skirt also didn't have any notes besides denim in the concept art, so I took some liberties and tried to simplify the sewing process due to my limited skill level. That meant not adding a snap closure or not sewing functional pockets for the front. Instead, I opted to just sew 2 pieces of fabric at the sides using a heavily modified Culture Japan wrap skirt pattern. In addition to the skirt, I also drafted my own pattern for the back pockets. I'm pretty sure this was way above my skill level, however, I still wanted it to look somewhat like the original and not be super basic. Since I hadn't sewn in so long, I decided to make a test skirt beforehand using an old shirt. And boy oh boy, I'm glad I did. The stitches were all uneven, the fabric was cut weird, and it didn't even fit quite right. From this experience, I was able to work out which order to sew the pieces in, as well as adjusting the pattern for a better fit. I did end up making one more test skirt, which turned out way better than the other one, but it was still a bit too big. However, I was satisfied enough with how things were shaping out, so I proceeded to go on to the real one, using the fabric from some old jeans I don't wear anymore. I first sew a decorative stitch down the middle, using a pin to mark where it would be, although it didn't end up working quite that well. Next, I sew the faux pocket stitches on both sides, once again trying to use a pin for placement. First, the right side. Then the left. Second try. It was too uneven. Third time's the charm, I guess. I ended up using chalk as a pattern to sew over. Luckily, the jean fabric was dark enough so I could see it clearly. Looks okay, it's not exactly even, but it's good enough for now. I then sewed the back decorative stitch. But it ended up really uneven, straight to the seam ripper. Let's try again. After a few more tries, I finally got a result which I was happy with. Looks pretty good if I do say so myself. Next are the pockets, which I cut notches and ironed the flaps off camera. I first started off by hemming the top of the pocket. I was a bit afraid my sewing machine would stop through the thick parts of the fabric, and sure enough it did. But with a bit of convincing, I was able to get it through the second time. But since the hem was so small, it went straight off the edge. Third try. Seam ripped instantly. Fourth try? Well, it wasn't perfect, but I ended up hand stitching the wonky part off camera, as well as the other pocket. Next, I pinned both of them on opposite sides of the decorative middle stitch. I decided to sew the left one first. I hand stitched a bit of the missing hem as it looked too uneven for my liking. I think it looks pretty good for having no idea what I'm doing. Then I sew the right one. And here they are. I think they could have been placed more evenly, but yeah, I guess it's fine. I did in fact re-sew a bit by hand. After this, I sewed one side of the skirt together, hemmed it, then sewed the other side, finishing it all off camera. This will be a reoccurring theme, you'll see. I also want to mention from this point on, I'm not including any mistakes. Just keep that in mind. I probably tried 2 or 3 times before sewing the final one. So, I didn't sew any of it on camera. Yeah. It was probably the most intimidating part of this entire project, and I ended up putting it off until like a week and a half before the con. Not only was I crunched for time, I didn't want the added stress of having to film, so I'll explain what I did to the best of my abilities. Like the skirt, the shirt had one single note in the concept art, light sweater, which I think is in reference to the material. I ended up choosing this red fabric, which I would also use for the hat and socks. I honestly really don't like it, but hey, it was the closest thing they had. For the stripes, I'm pretty sure if I was more competent sewing, they would have looked better being color blocked, or iron on vinyl could have worked as well, but I decided to paint them on with acrylics. Doll boob warning in 3, 2, 1. Okay! First off, I tried to draft a pattern for the shirt, sweater, I'm just gonna call it a shirt, myself using the masking tape and saran wrap technique, which is what's playing in the background right now. Unfortunately, I did it wrong somehow, and the pattern ended up too small, uneven, and just overall unusable. I then planned to use the Culture Japan Henley neck t-shirt pattern, but the neckline was just too different from Carlita's actual shirt. I tried to modify it by raising the neckline, but both sides were uneven. Also, I know, it'd probably be easier to sew the collar as a separate part, but I don't know, it really looks just like one piece. Anyways, what I settled on was a heavily modified Culture Japan ballerina neck t-shirt pattern. I did attempt to sew a test shirt beforehand, but I got frustrated and exploded. Also, in the limited footage I did take, you'll notice I'm using Summer as a model because I originally intended to have her cosplay as Carlita. The shirt ended up being a bit too tight for the Smart Doll large bust, and even the smart little small bus had a hard time fitting in it. Unfortunately, you'll see how it looks in the end. I initially thought they were part of her boots, but in the concept art it says below. I'm gonna be honest, I can't tell where the boot ends and the sock begins, but I assume the dark red stripe is part of the sock and the white stripe is from the boot. Either way, I wasn't going to sew an entire pair of shoes along with everything else, so I used these white ones instead. I first started by using the boot as a guide to gauge how long I wanted the sock to be. I ended up not using this guide though. Instead, I pinned the sock directly on Summer's leg. I cut off the excess fabric, and here's how it turned out. Next, I pinned the hem down and sewed it. It was a bit uneven, so once again, seam ripped and hand sewed. I then sewed the edges to close the sock, but of course not without mistakes and bound. This time, it went off the edge, so I had to make several other unconnected stitches to prevent a hole in the toe of the sock. It's a bit messy, but once flipped inside, it's hardly noticeable. Once again, I finished the other sock off camera. Carlita has two pieces of jewelry that she wears, a small white bracelet and the same type of pendant as Damon, which is what I started off with. Like the bigger one, I kneaded the very dry clay, then rolled it out. I used a small American Girl cup to punch out the circle shape. I also used the back end of this cup to shape the bracelet, and I once again wished I had those sculpting tools. Oh well, sometimes a man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Here's the pendant dried. And the bracelet. I tried to sand it later on, but fresh off the cup, it looks super rough and uneven. It's also very thin, which, while carving the grooves, it cracked. I did catch this on camera, sort of. You'll see why I didn't put the footage in here later. Figuring out how the hat worked was probably the second hardest part besides the shirt. At least with that, there was probably bound to be some pattern to help somewhere, but a hat? That specific? I had no choice but to do it myself. I briefly considered knitting for a bit since I have a hat that's similar in style and it's knit, but I literally made this like a week before day one of Anime Expo and I had no time. Also, no motivation, but that's besides the point. So I drafted up this cute little pattern that consisted of this half dome type shape which would make up the main hat part and half an oval shape that made up the flaps. I don't know how to describe these shapes, but you get the gist. I cut out two half dome shapes for the front and back. Same with the flaps, but instead I cut out four, which when sewn together would make two, one for each side. I actually just let the hat sit until a day before Anime Expo, and I attempted to make the clay accessories instead. Luckily, but the power of editing, we can fast forward to that day. Here, I've pinned one of the flaps together, Then I seal the edges with Fabri-Tac. I was getting tired of filming and just wanted to finish, so I sewed the rest of the hat off camera. Here's the result. It's noticeably very uneven, but, well, I probably could have done better if I wasn't in such a rush. The final part in this journey was making the pom-poms, or whatever these little balls are. Whether or not they're actual pom-poms, I still really wanted to try my hand at making them. How could I not? The idea just sounded so cute. At this point, my camera's SD card was running out of space, so it didn't record cutting at the base pattern, but there's plenty of tutorials on YouTube if you're interested. I'll link the ones that helped me out during this project in the description. During my first recording, the camera cut off, but here's how the end result should look. However, I still really wanted to show off how I made it, so here's a condensed version of the pom-pom making process. First, take both ends of a thread of yarn and begin to wrap them around the two cardboard pieces, which should be sandwiched together. How full you want your pom-pom to turn out depends on the amount of times you wrap the yarn, but also keep in mind that the fuller and fluffier it is, the harder it will be to cut. Once you're satisfied with how it looks, cut the longer part of the yarn off. I wasn't really sure what to do with these two dangly parts, so I just left them like that. Next, you're going to want to cut down the center of the two cardboard pieces. I recommend using smaller scissors. Cut a longer length of yarn which you'll tie in between the cardboard to secure all the loose threads. Do this a few times to make sure none of them will fall out. Although, if you lose one or two in the process, that's okay. Remove the two cardboard pieces. Okay, kind of looks a little ugly here, but just trust the process. The final step is to shape and trim any long pieces of yarn to make them all uniform length. I also fluffed it up a bit to spread out the yarn so it wouldn't clump together. And just like that, you got yourself a mini handmade pom-pom. So, you might be wondering, where's the rest of the footage? Don't you still have to paint some things? Well, about that. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on either. Basically, I sanded all the clay pieces, drilled in holes with a handheld Dremel, cut eye pins, and painted. I also glued the white flower clip together off camera. Once again, if anyone has any interest in how I make my own flower clips, I'd be happy to make a video going more in depth. And without further ado, here's how everything turned out. Well, mainly the Carlita cosplay. Unfortunately, I never got a complete picture of Enkidu, just this one low quality shot I took while trying on the wig. I think I learned a lot during this whole cosplay excursion, and not just the sewing portion either, but filming as well. Next time, I'm just going to record what I planned to do the step before, then show off the sewn result in the end. This way, it's not as hard to follow with what I'm doing, nor do I have to worry about whether my camera's still recording while I'm sewing. Also, the amount of card space I wasted? Sheesh. 5 hours of almost a whole lot of nothing reduced to a good 40 minutes or something. So, what do you guys think? Do you have any suggestions on what I could have done better? Well, at Anime Expo, someone actually suggested I could have glued on the ribbons rather than painting those ugly-ass stripes. Feedback like that would be much appreciated. Please be nice though, this was my first time trying something like this. Anyways, the next video I plan to release is a recap of Anime Expo 2023. Yeah, almost 3 months late. But anyways, then to wrap up this 3-part series, I'll be taking a look at something that hasn't really been featured on this channel before. A return to form, kind of. Well, until next time, good night.